and welcome to the Non-Perfect Parents Club podcast special episodes with me, Emma. These episodes are aimed to keep us in the know, covering topics that we want to understand or know more about. I will be joined by special guests who are going to help us be informed. As always, no judgment allowed, but I expect honesty, truth, and a whole load of support. Hello and welcome back to the Non-Perfect Parents Club podcast, Season 2. Today I'm joined by Joanne, a mum and GP who is here to share her knowledge with us on a variety of topics with regards to her work. Hello and welcome, Joanne, to the podcast.
Hi Emma, thank you very much for having me on.
You're welcome. The floor is yours. It's over to you.
Thank you very much. So thank you for having me. It's really exciting to come along and do what is my first podcast. So quite an exciting experience for me, and it's lovely to be able to do it talking about something that I feel really passionate about. So as you said, I am a mum and a GP. I've got 3 boys who are 8, 6 and 3, and my job is to work as a general practitioner. So I do 3 days a week working, seeing patients in surgeries and seeing patients who live out in the community, and it's a really great job. And it's taught me lots about health and well-being, and I wanted to talk about that today in relation to being a parent, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Lovely. So I'd say I am a parent myself, and I juggle looking after my children with work and having a husband and a house to run and all the rest of it. So I appreciate that it can be difficult to dedicate time to yourself, and especially to focusing on your health. Yeah. So health as a general concept is it's obviously huge, isn't it? You could do a whole series of podcasts on health, but I wanted to talk about things that I thought were particularly relevant to us as parents, and especially busy parents where you maybe haven't got all that time that you want to dedicate to looking after your own health. So I think we all know as parents, no matter how many children you've got or what else you've got going on at home, you've never got any time. And you're always your bottom of your own priority list. So we look after everyone else, do everything else that they need, and then we sort ourselves out at the end. And it can be really difficult to try and look after yourself when you've got that sort of mentality. So I try to think a bit about it as looking after yourself in order that you can look after the people that you need to look after. And it's really easy to say that, isn't it? But not necessarily so easy to do. But I think good analogy is you can't pour from an empty cup. So you've got to kind of fill yourself up, charge your own battery, and then you're good to look after everyone else. But as we all know, in reality, it's not quite as easy as that. So some of the things I want to talk about are really simple, like to the point where you think, I'm not really sure you need to be a GP to talk about that, but possibly things that we maybe don't think about that we could do, and also some like easy wins as well, because I think we're all for the easy wins, aren't we?
Definitely,
Kind of like the equivalent of chucking the tea in the oven and doing it itself. So it's something that's really important to me, because I've had times when my health hasn't been very good for one reason or another, and I've noticed that if I've been able to do certain things, it's really made a difference. So I wanted to kind of highlight those. So health, I think of as sort of separate in 3 different areas, but ones that are like really linked together as well. So your physical health, your mental health, and then your emotional health or your well-being. And it's really hard to have all 3 of those good, or your health if one of those isn't quite right, if that makes sense. So they all link in together, and something that impacts on your physical health will no doubt impact on your mental health and your emotional health as well. So it's when you're trying to improve your health, it's thinking about things that kind of tick all those boxes, really. Generally speaking, it's much easier to prevent an illness than it is to cure it once it's come. So I'll talk a bit about things that we can do for preventative healthcare, and things like screening as well, which I know is a topic you've got lots to say on, and so it'll be good to have a chat about that later. So the first thing I'm going to talk about, which seems like a bit of a daft thing to talk about on a parenting podcast, but is about sleep. So I think as a group, parents don't get enough sleep, it's fair to say. And it really depends what your situation is. So I'm sure you've got a lot of parents listening with children of all ages and different sizes of families. If there's any parents of newborns out there, they'll probably want to punch me over the podcast here when I tell them to get some more sleep.
It's that danger word, isn't it?
Absolutely. But then you might have parents of teenagers who are getting loads of sleep and think it's fine. But I think as a population, I would say we don't get enough sleep. I think the life has changed a lot for people over probably decades now, really, realistically, in terms of sleep. And it's probably not something that we really focus on. Well, there's a lot of evidence to say that not having enough sleep in the long term can make you more at risk of developing certain health conditions, so related to things like heart disease and dementia. And I think not so much thinking about the longer term, because I think on a daily basis we don't really think about what life is going to be like in 20, 50 years, do we? But thinking about the here and now, I think we all know that we feel better when we've had enough sleep, and what an impact it can have on our health as a whole if we're not getting enough sleep. And the easiest thing to see is how it impacts on your emotional health, isn't it? How you're feeling fed up, you're a bit irritable with the kids maybe. But in terms of your mental health and your physical health, it can have a really big impact on that as well. So your concentration isn't as good. You probably aren't nourishing yourself in the same way. You know, nobody's making a meal from scratch, are they, when they've had that 3 hours sleep with the newborn, let's be honest. So we'll be reaching for all the kind of wrong things, if you will. But those things that give us like what we need, you know, a quick bit of energy, and then we immediately have a crash afterwards, don't we, because we haven't put the right thing in our body. But just thinking about what an impact sleep has on you. So it's one thing knowing that it's good to have more sleep, but practically what do you really do about it? Because for a lot of us, we have that, and I think you probably will feel this as well, Emma. You walk down the stairs after you've put the kids in bed and you stand and you breathe for a minute and you think, should I go to bed? Or should I do all those million things that I haven't been able to do today? And it's that real tussle, isn't it? Like internally.
It's like a internal battle, isn't it?
Absolutely.
What do I do?
And you think, do I talk to my other half? Do I sort all the washing out? Do I answer all my WhatsApps that I've ignored all day? Or do I go and get in bed? And it's obviously really situation dependent. You know, if there's some things that night that you really know you've got to do so that everyone's settled for the day tomorrow, then fair enough. But even just having like 15 minutes of extra sleep a night can really make a difference in the, like, cumulatively. You think, you know, it soon turns into extra hours, and you know that goes on and has a real benefit. Now I think the other thing to think about is how we go to sleep. So if you think about what we do with our kids, you know, we have this real run up to bedtime, don't we? You know, devices off, technology away, nice warm bath story. But then we think about ourselves, and especially that kind of evening that we've just been talking about there. So you might sit down on the sofa, put something on telly, have a look at your phone, maybe have something to eat or drink. All of those things are going to keep us more awake. None of the things that we would sort of do for the kids, but something that we think...
that's a really good point.
You just kind of reach for it, don't you? You might have a glass of wine or a bottle of beer or something. And that's all, you know, totally normal, isn't it? But probably not particularly good for like leading you into a good sleep. So phones is probably the worst one. Nothing more stimulating is than scrolling through on your phone. But if you're going to do it, I would say set yourself a bit of time in the evening where you say, right, this is kind of my bit of my evening now, and then after that I'm going to go up to bed. So kind of try and wind down, so like dim the lights a bit, maybe not something decaf if you're going to have something to drink, nothing too heavy to eat. But then when you go up to your bedroom, try to keep your bedroom just your bedroom or any other business you do in your bedroom, but no tellies, no phones, nothing like that. And just try and sort of like a bit like a plane landing, you know, you can't just suddenly come down from the day and be asleep. Just let yourself gradually ease into sleep, because the quality of your sleep is as important as the quantity, really. So if you can get off to sleep nicely and then have a good few solid hours, it's great. And obviously we've all got little people that are probably waking us up through the night as well. But if you can try to get off to sleep, that can be a really good start. I'm terrible for thinking about lots of things when I get into bed, so I'll think, I must do this, or I better not forget that. So a useful tip is to have, depends if you live in the 90s or you live now, but either a pen and paper or your phone, I guess, because you put it on notes. But jot it down, so then you can kind of take it out of your brain and you don't have to think about it. So you can have like a little to-do list for the next day, but it's not in your brain, and you can just let yourself ease off a bit more. And then another thing that's quite useful is trying to kind of set your sleep time, so as much as you can. Obviously we know that parenting life things just come along, don't they, and unsettle things, but if you can try and go to sleep and get up at roughly the same time each day, that really helps your body's natural sleep routine. So you might be a bit like me, you know, we get woken up by our 3-year-old whenever he decides to wake up, but as he's getting a little bit older, it's getting a little bit later, and now I'm finding that I'm actually setting an alarm to get up at like a certain time, and it does feel better, I think. And if I deviate from that, like if I have a little bit extra a weekend, sometimes I wake up and feel a bit worse for it, weirdly. So that's another good habit to get into. But sleep is really difficult. definitely good if you can get a bit more, even if it isn't just little bits. If you're someone with really little children and you think sleep at night just isn't really an option at the moment because it's so broken with feeds and whatever else baby needs, listen to that advice of sleeping when they sleep in the daytime, you know. So generally speaking, it's good to have you sleep in kind of one big block at night time. But if that's just not going to happen for you, then if they are going off for a sleep in the day, then take advantage of that. Rather than doing that thing, you know, you run around tidying everything and making tea.
It's that thing, isn't it? It's really hard to kind of allow yourself to do that, especially when they're so small, because you've got, I need to do this, I need to do that. But I think, like, sleep is something, obviously, I think about it all the time, but I don't properly think about it. So there's lots of things you're saying that I'm thinking, like, and, like, just while you're talking, I think, do we put enough emphasis on sleep in terms of allowing ourselves to do it? Do you know what I mean? It's always, it's obviously a necessity for life, but I know I don't really think about it. You just do it.
It's literally just like that thing that happens at the end of the day, isn't it? That you just do when you've got a bit of spare time. But and I think it kind of like is the theme for everything I want to say today. It's about making something a priority. Like, is your house being spotlessly clean and tidy a priority? You know, and it might be to some people because that might really help their mental health. And so I'm not taking away from that. You know, everybody's different, everyone's setup is different, but just thinking about at that point, you know, what is most important for you then? Is it better that you get an extra hour in bed and you feel better the next day and you can kind of do your jobs better? I think sometimes, well, if you've had that bit of extra sleep, you're probably a bit more efficient the next day, and you could maybe make some time savings then.
And I always find as well, I'm much more patient with the girls, and it
100%.
it changes the day a lot of the time, doesn't it? Like, if I'm tired and grumpy and, you know, it's just, it doesn't really work out, does it?
No, absolutely. And how often do we look at our kids and think, oh, they're so grumpy because they've not had enough sleep? I'm sure they're looking at us and thinking, she's so grumpy because she's not had enough sleep.
That's it. Even though it's their fault.
100%. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, something to have a bit of a think about. That's my top tip. There's absolutely loads of podcasts and books out there about how to sleep well, or about the impact of sleep. And I think, it's a bit of a interest of mine at the minute. New Year's resolution to get more sleep. So that was the first thing that I wanted to talk about. And then the next thing was about, it again sounds like another simple and really basic thing, but it's about like what our nutrition is like, and particularly our water intake. So again, lots of evidence to say that our concentration and attention and things is impacted by not having enough water. I think it's really easy to get to the end of the day, isn't it, and think, I've had a couple of brews and nothing else. And because no one's ever got time to go to the toilet, you're not wanting to throw loads of water down your neck either, are you? But really important to drink plenty of fluids to help with your body's function, but also your brain's function as well. And also that will in turn sort of help with your nutrition. So if you're someone like me who loves a snack, it can be a lot easier to have just a big glass of water first and then see if I really am hungry. But that can definitely be a benefit. I'm looking at our nutrition. I don't like to call it diet because I think that just makes you think, doesn't it, of not eating things you want to eat, but how we nourish ourselves, so what we're putting in our body. So I think we spend loads of time thinking about what we give our kids, but maybe not that much time thinking about what we give ourselves. I can think back to my eldest being a baby, and he'd have gone to bed and I'd be like stewing fruit in the kitchen at like 10 o'clock at night and freezing it in ice cubes. This is before I discovered pouches, obviously. No, this is my first.
I remember, I was the same.
And then I'd be having like a piece of toast for my tea because I didn't have any time. But really important to think about having, 3 meals across the day and of some balance. What a good meal looks like to one person is different than what it looks like. So it depends what you like to eat, what you can eat, what your budget is, loads of different things. So, but your nutrition can directly link in with your family's nutrition as well, and again depends what your kind of setup is. We've had different periods as a family where we've maybe fed the kids earlier on in the day and then eaten ourselves in the evening, and we're really trying now as our children get a bit older to try and eat as a family, mainly because I got so irritated with trying to make 2 different meals and having my tea at 9 o'clock at night. It just started to feel like a real bugbear. So this is something that we've really tried to do, and we've tried a meal box, like a delivery meal box, and that's worked really well for us. it's not for everybody, but it's been really nice opportunity to cook one meal that you all sit down and eat, and that I've made the kids pick. So I'll show them the app and say, right, you choose what we're having, and then I feel like they take a bit of that responsibility on board then, that they've said that's what we should have, so they've got to try it. And don't get me wrong, some of them have pretty much straightly gone in the bin, but they've really tried some new stuff that's been really good, and it's been dead nice to sit down as a family as well. And I guess the kids learn from us, don't they? So if we're showing them that what you do at mealtime is you sit down and you try everything and you play, and then, you know, that's a good eating habit, isn't it? And just a nice time as a family as well, to have a bit of a catch-up after a busy day.
It's always a good time for like conversation, like say, catch up on your day and stuff, isn't it? We all try and eat together and sit round the table together, and we've always done that. That was just one of my things. I just like that connection towards the end of the day, and then after tea we all go wherever, you know, like to wind down and stuff. So
it's really nice, and I think we've really noticed that as a family over the last few months of, you know, really making a conscious effort, and it has made a massive difference. So definitely advocate that as a good thing, and I think it just makes you think more sort of about that meal, rather than, like, you know, it being about what you put in on that plate, rather than it being, you know, just like a means to an end of just having something to keep you going. But there's still always a place for beige food, in my opinion. When you've got kids, there's always a role for chicken nuggets and fish fingers. They will need to be called upon time and time again. So it's not always going to be perfect, and you're not always going to have a plate full of veg, are you, and all be sat down together. But introducing it into a routine, I think, is really nice, and really helps you make sure you're getting nourished as well at the same time. So the next thing I was going to talk about was activity, and this is my swap word for exercise, because again, I think exercise just makes you feel miserable, doesn't it, straight away? So depends what it is that you like to do. You know, if you're a very active person and you're wanting to improve your health, you might want to think about trying new things or pushing yourself in things you already do. But if you're someone for who activity is just really something that you just don't get into for whatever reason, then it can be thinking about just really small steps. And this can be something that you can do with the family as well. So encouraging the children to be a bit more active, and, you know, them seeing you as a role model, and then making it more fun for you as well. So it depends what you like to do, really. There's lots of good things for people who are into walking, running, jogging, running, whatever you want to call it, really, like your couch to 5Ks and your park runs and things. But then your leisure centres tend to have loads of different activities as well. Sometimes the barrier for people, I think, can be the time, but also the cost of it. You know, some of these activities can be really expensive. So if it's literally something that you're wanting to do that can fit in around your family and doesn't cost anything, then things like YouTube, there's so many different, like, you know, it's that kind of Joe Wicks vibe from lockdown, but there's loads of things on there that can be done to just get you active for a little bit. So just get you sweating a bit, your heart pumping a bit more, can really improve your heart's health, and has a massive impact on your emotional and your mental health as well. So the advice would be to do 30 minutes 5 times a week, which for some people would seem like a massive leap from where they are now. So certainly don't think, if you're someone who doesn't do much activity, that's where you need to be at. Just trying to incorporate little bits in your day, even if it's like 10 minutes dancing around the kitchen with the kids after you've had some tea. Yeah,
that's it. I mean, that's something, like, my followers that follow me on like Instagram and stuff will know, like, we have a kitchen disco quite often. We always have the music on and dancing about. But something, so now we've moved here and the kids have moved schools and stuff, me and my youngest can walk to and from school, which has made a massive difference. But something I'm kind of focusing on this year is play. So there's I follow, it's called the Playful Den on Instagram, and she's really good about encouraging adults to remember to play. And there's just little things that I'm kind of taking from that and trying to incorporate into our lives, so that the kids see it as fun. So, like, for instance, I've made a rod for my own back here. The other week we were walking home from school, and so I don't know if you know, but in terms of social media, I call my girls, the eldest is a wildcat, the youngest is Bunny. So Bunny, she didn't want to walk, and she was doing these, I'm tired. I said, I'll carry you if you want. And she was like, oh, will ya? And it was quite shocked, but I didn't just like pick her up and carry her. I held, so she was like a plank, and I held her under my arm and I ran with her. So obviously that got my heart rate going. I was sweating. That's a little bit of exercise, but she thought it was absolutely amazing. So now every day it's like, oh, will you carry me?
There you go, you got your exercise.
That's it. So, just there's even like little things like that it kind of, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it benefits you both. They don't see it as, they just see it as fun. You're having fun and they're laughing, but at the same time you're doing a little bit of exercise.
Yeah.
So
and it's just it's like little cheats almost, isn't it?
That's
something
it.
That's going to be classed as exercise without really feeling like it. I think if you think about being in the gym at 6 a.m. lifting weights, like it's not everyone's cup of tea, is it? Some people love it. Don't get me wrong, but just kind of easy ways that you can incorporate it into daily life, and the kids to see you being more active and like adults playing.
Great.
Great.
And it's
I'm
just,
sure they love it.
I guess it's like finding those little things, sometimes thinking outside of the box of, it doesn't have to be going to the gym, it doesn't have to be going for a run. I mean, even just going on the park with the kids, for, as you can tell, we're a bit of a big kid sometimes, but just going, and you have the parks that have your different equipment, like assault course type things, and like timing each other, and just stuff like that you can do, isn't it? It doesn't cost anything, and it's just 10-15 minutes out of your day. And
absolutely. Bit of fresh air, bit of vitamin D outside. It can make a massive difference. And if that's where you're starting from, you get your confidence with it. 'Cause I think that's important, isn't it? That if you're trying to form a new habit, you need to enjoy it, and you want it to be something that you actively want to go and do. And if you go and have a good experience like that, where you think, oh, that was really good and I felt good afterwards, and the kids enjoyed it, you're more likely to try other things, aren't you? Whereas if you do sort of that, like what I'd call like that New Year's Eve vibe of setting yourself loads of completely unachievable goals, and then a few days later you're miserable because you've not achieved any of them. It's a really horrible experience, isn't it? So absolutely.
And it's that thing as well, I think sometimes you can feel so self-conscious doing stuff, and I guess kind of just adding on to what I've said about having fun with the kids and that, I don't think anyone would ever look at a parent running around with the child laughing and that as, oh, why are you doing that? I would always look on and think, oh my God, look at them, that's so nice, and how good is that? But I think sometimes we can feel quite self-conscious to do it, because you think, oh God, what do I look like? And and we shouldn't, should we? We should just go for it. And
this is it, isn't it? I think sometimes we can tell ourselves that other people are looking at us and wondering what we're up to, but they're probably not.
No.
Thinking, I wonder what I'm going to make for tea tonight. Or, I need to pick a pint of milk up from the shop. But definitely. I got into running like quite late in life when I met my husband, and his family are quite keen runners, and I would never have dreamed of going out for a run before then, and it was only because I had like good role models and good examples. But at first I used to really worry about what I was wearing and did I look silly and I was all sweaty, but once you start to enjoy something, all that kind of fades away, doesn't it? And I think it's really good for your children to see you doing that as well, and seeing you enjoying it. And then my little boys are always asking if they can come for a run with me, and one of them's nearly faster than I am now, so it's getting difficult. But it's nice to do together as a family, isn't it? And I think anything that you can kind of incorporate something you want to do for you whilst benefiting the family is a bit of a win, isn't it?
Definitely.
Time wise. Great. So it kind of leads nicely on to the next bit, which I call charging your battery. So this is probably more focused on like your emotional and your mental health, really, but doing something that you enjoy. That you spend as a parent so much of your life, don't you, doing things for other people and sorting everyone else out. But if you really think about it, how much you actually do for yourself, that is something you want to do kind of on your terms, and being able to fit that into life might actually seem really difficult, but if it can be something small that maybe doesn't take a lot of time at first, that is flexible in terms of timings, that's a good way to kind of start. Even if it's just like literally sitting down for 10 minutes in the evening and reading a magazine or something, but just focusing on yourself as being important and saying, right, I'm going to do this for me now. And I think at first when I started trying to focus on it, it felt like almost like a bit of guilt, or I shouldn't be doing that because I should be doing something else. But actually, when you start to see the benefit it has on how you're feeling, because if your emotional health is better, then your mental health is better, and your physical health is going to be better. So it's telling yourself that no, it's okay to do this because it's going to make me healthier overall. And it seems a bit silly to think that sitting down for 10 minutes and doing Wordle or whatever it is you might want to do that day is going to give you that benefit. But it really does. And like I say at the beginning, it's just kind of those simple things.
Do you know, it's so funny you've said that, like any members that are listening. So it was literally just this morning I've posted on my members group about what are you doing for yourself this week. That's something that I'm really focusing on at the minute is, you know, what am I doing for me that isn't something that I don't enjoy, isn't something I've got to do, it's just something for me. So no, I really agree with that.
And some weeks it might be literally something that's 5 minutes, but you know, other weeks it might be something amazing, like might have a spa day with friends or something, you know, and then that's really easy to see, isn't it? But those little things can make a big difference.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about was something that I mentioned at the beginning about smears, and I know you've got an experience of it. I don't know if you want to talk about that first, or you want me to...
I'll let you go on, and I'll probably just chip in.
Yeah, that's fine. So screening is a general term that we use for like basically looking for disease before it kind of makes itself obvious, or looking for pre-disease, I guess, in the case of smears. So for anyone who doesn't know what a smear is, this is taking a sample of cells from the neck of your womb to look out for any signs that might show that there's an early or pre-cancerous change to the neck of the womb. So women from age 25 will be invited along through a national screening programme. And the smear test itself is something that nobody looks forward to, I think it's fair to say. You know, I think when you have babies and everything goes on down there, you kind of accept that, but still go for a smear test just feels like it's something you don't want to do. So it's a quick procedure, I think probably in and out in probably about 10-15 minutes. The person who's taking it will talk you through exactly what they're going to do. So it's usually a nurse, and they'll explain the procedure and ask you a few questions beforehand. If it's your first one, they'll probably show you all the different bits of kit that they use as well, just so you're a bit more comfortable with it. But basically it's trousers off, behind a curtain with a blanket, all nice and comfortable and private. And then it's this plastic speculum, which looks a bit like a duck's beak. For anyone that's seen one before, or you can Google one if you haven't seen one before. And it goes into the vagina, basically opens up so you can see the neck of the womb. And then we use a little funny little plastic brush that just takes away some of the cells in the neck of the womb. And then they send it off to the lab, and they look at that under a microscope, and they basically will say whether there's any changes that need to be worried about. So if it's all completely normal, that's it. You just get called back again in a few years. And then if there's any changes, they'll advise whether that just needs more frequent monitoring or whether you need some actual treatment for it. So it's a really great way to pick up any early changes. And that combined with the cervical vaccine is like really powerful. You know, we might get to a point where cervical cancer is like incredibly rare. We wouldn't even dare to say like doesn't exist anymore. That's, you know, that it's obviously the hope, but it's massive steps towards reducing cases of cervical cancer. And cervical cancer is something that affects young women and you know mums, people with young children, and it's something that obviously we want to be able to pick up on. As I said earlier, nobody wants to go for their smear test. I can remember going for my last one with 2 of my children, and I had to give them a bag of jelly tots and my phone to watch behind the screen, and I thought, this is just the worst. But it was absolutely fine. I was literally out of there in 10 minutes. They were none the wiser. So mummy has to go behind the curtain because she just needs to show the nurse something, and that was the end of it. And you know, and that's you done for 3 years. Then. So it is really straightforward. But there's lots of reasons why women don't want to go along for it. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like even like so, I think mine was last year. But to me, it's so like it is one of the most important things, you know, to keep up to date. But the letter comes and it's like, all right, and I'd put it on the side and. Right, I need to book that, and you forget, and then I have a place where I keep it so that it's there and I remember. And it took me probably a few weeks to book it, and if my family hadn't have gone through what we've gone through, I'd have probably left it a bit longer. And it is one of those things. It is so important to do. Just, you know, it's it's got the potential to be life-saving, hasn't it? You know, it's really easy to not do it, like you say. And I think even those little bits, like I can totally get what you say. You know, you get that letter, but you're in the middle of doing something else. So you kind of put it on the side, and then you might ring the surgery, but the line might be busy, so you put it off. But it's really important. And more, I think, I know the surgery that I work at, we're trying to be accommodating for women having smears. So there's nothing worse than booking one, building yourself up to it, and then coming on your period the day before and you can't have it. It's really frustrating, but we will rebook them, and we offer them in the evenings and at weekends, because nobody wants to take time off work to go for something that is, you know, literally 10 minutes of a job, and feels like something that kind of you don't absolutely have to go along to. So your surgery should make it easy for you to be able to get an appointment, and they really want you to come in for your smear test. You know, it's far easier to pick up those really early changes.
Well, that's it. And I think another thing is the fear, isn't it, of what if it does pick up something, but you've got to kind of think it's far better to pick it up than to not, and you know what ends up for a little bit further down the line.
Absolutely. If you can pick up something at the stage where it's either just needs observation, or you can treat it really easily, then that's definitely, you know, where we want to be, isn't it? There's lots of reasons why women don't go along for it, and it's hard to kind of break all of those down in a generic way. You know, someone might have a really specific reason why they don't want to go, but what I would say is, if you're worried about it, speak to your healthcare provider, whoever that might be, you know, your nurse or your GP, whoever you trust and feel comfortable in speaking to get some reassurance, and to have those questions answered. You know, no healthcare professional would mind you coming along, having a look at the equipment, talking through the process, not even having the smear there necessarily if you didn't feel ready for it, but just taking the time and just, I guess, giving yourself all the information you need to make that decision as to what's right for you. And there's Joe's Trust is a fantastic charity that does a lot about cervical cancer. Really good website to have a look at if you've got any questions or queries. But very important. And I guess leading on from that as well is checking our breasts. So I imagine the age group that listen to this this podcast probably aren't at the age where they're getting called in for national screening for mammograms and things, but it's really important to check our own breast to look out for any signs of anything that might be something worrying. So generally speaking, we're asking women to look out for lumps. That's the most obvious thing that we want to have a look at. But other more subtle things can be like skin changes, so drawing in of the skin or dimpling of the skin is really important to look out for. And then also any changes to the nipple, so either how it looks or any discharge that seems a bit odd from the nipple, that we would also really want to see that too. I see lots of women who come in with pain in the breast, and they worry that that's a sign of breast cancer. Pain's actually a really uncommon symptom when it comes to breast cancer. Not to say that it's never related to it, but it's definitely not one of the common ones that we see. But it's really important to check your own breasts regularly, and that's because during your cycle the texture of your breast can change. So what feels normal on like day 1 of your cycle might not feel normal to you on day 15, day 16. So just feeling confident in when you're doing it and what it is that you're doing. I mean, there's loads of really good resources. I can share a link if you like.
That'd be great.
About a good kind of demonstration of how to check your breasts. But as long as you're doing it in sort of the same way, making sure you cover all the areas and doing it at least a couple of times during the monthly cycle, that should be enough for you to be able to pick up any changes that you think are new for you. And there's certain women that are at increased risk of developing breast cancer, maybe because of their family history. There's other things as well that increase the risk of breast cancer that probably feel less known to us. So increased alcohol intake increases your risk of breast cancer, and so does obesity, which I think is probably something that, although we talk a lot about obesity, I definitely don't think it's seen in the same group as like smoking and alcohol excess in terms of like risks of other conditions, but it is shown that can increase the risk of breast cancer. So if you fall into one of those groups, I think that's relevant to you, then it's just good to be vigilant as to what's going on. So that was our screening. So the last bit I wanted to talk about specific to mums was, parents, any dads out there, was parental mental health. So I think this goes back to what we spoke about earlier, about how it's really easy to not prioritise yourself and look after everyone else first. And it can be hard sometimes to pick up that there's a problem with a parent's mental health, because I often see parents in the surgery with their children and all the focus is on what's wrong with the child at that point. And, you'll check in with them, and you certainly, if there was anything that was worrying you, you might want to dig a bit deeper. But I think we're very good at covering it up, aren't we? No, I'm fine. I'm just this. I'm just that. I'm just busy. I'm just tired. But it's really important that we pick up any mental health problems that might happen to the parents, because obviously anything that's happened to the parent will be impacting on the children as well. And so we really want to know about that, because we know that if there's mental illness there, that's going to affect physical health and emotional health as well, and going to affect how things are at home, even to the point of affecting things like your finances and things, you know. So it can have a really big like ripple effect. So it's really important that a parent feels confident in speaking to somebody about their mental health, whether that is going to see your GP, or whether it's more mentioning it to a friend at playgroup one day, or a family member. But whoever it is that you speak to, just really important to be honest about how you're feeling, and then be able to get any help that you might need. There's loads of web-based help, loads of good NHS websites, and Mind is a really good website for mental health. So there is lots of help out there, but that first bit of recognising that there's a problem and asking for help is what's really difficult. But being mentally unwell is as common as being physically unwell, and it's so taboo, unfortunately.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I think, because obviously I do a lot around mental health. I struggle with mental health, and so I talk about it quite a lot. And I think there is still such a big stigma around it. And I know the one thing that kind of gets repeated to me is people are kind of scared to open up about it because they're scared they're going to get the children taken off them. And there's still this such a huge thing around that. And I know people always say to me, oh, you're brave speaking about it, and you know, blah blah blah. And I just do it because for me, sharing it helps me. It's like offloading it a bit, and then once I let that out, it makes me feel better. But also I know that I'm never the only one. There's always other people out there, and when you see other people talking about it, it's like, oh, they've got it too, or you know, I can approach them, I can speak to them about it, they get it, they understand, and I'm not on my own. I always find that's like a massive thing that so many, particularly mums that I speak to, always think that they're the only one.
Absolutely.
And they never are. There's always someone else out there that can relate to how you're feeling.
And I think part of what we can find difficult is that a lot of what we see is people's like best version of themselves, isn't it? So you know, you're looking at social media, absolutely, and you know, social media's got so many positives. But for me, this is one of the areas where I think it's got real potential to cause harm. That we look at what everyone else is up to and how perfect their life is and how they're doing everything right, or so we think, and we compare our current self to that, don't we? You know, we're sat with, you know, not brushed your hair, not brushed your teeth, not got dressed. You know, you're absolutely right in what you say, that there will always be someone else out there who's been through something similar, or who's going through something similar. And it is really brave in speaking up. I absolutely agree with that. You know, you've probably made a massive difference to a lot of people who haven't yet been brave enough to do it. By doing it, they'll see you as a really positive role model.
I hope so.
I'm sure I think it's really important to speak around our children as well, because it's important that and I definitely think there's more recognition and a lot more being done in schools, which is fantastic. But I think for them to know that, you know, it's just another way of being ill, isn't it? You know, it's like being physically unwell. And knowing that they can recognise that in themselves as well, and say, oh, you know, I don't feel very well.
It's just recognising the different emotions and knowing that they're normal to feel, and it's more like finding a way of coping with them or dealing with them. It's
absolutely. You know, so many of the adults I see who have mental health problems had those problems in younger life, but they maybe just weren't recognised, addressed. You know, they didn't understand them. For you know, however it was that they didn't come to the front to be kind of dealt with at that point. But it often means that it can be more difficult to manage in later life. There's an awful lot to unpick there. But there is loads of support out there for mental health, and I say it's really, you know, if you can fix that, you can make other areas of health better as well. Fix that, sorry, that makes it sound really easy, doesn't it? But more what I'm meaning is if you can provide support and you know, and improve things.
Well, that's it. Like, I know myself, I've had anxiety for a good few years now, and I've done a lot of work to kind of get to the point where I'm at today, but it got to the point where I was noticing other health issues that were because of my anxiety, and that's where I said, right, I can't can't do this anymore. I don't want to feel like this. And that's when I started my little journey, if you will, of kind of getting on top of things and finding ways to manage it. But it does overspill. It can start off small, and if you don't deal with it, it does just kind of snowball up, if you will, and it will, like you say, into other areas of your health.
Absolutely, yeah. It's so important to have good mental health.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's, as you say, because it is taboo, it's more difficult to, I think, focus on that than it is the mental, your physical health.
Yeah.
You know, I think people find it really easy to square, you know, I've got a broken leg or I've had a heart attack, you know, that's all fine. But yeah, putting that emphasis on it, and as you say, you know, it can take a long time as well, can't it? Just like physical health problems can take a long time to develop, and the treatment of it can be lifelong, like you know, lots of different long-term conditions. So if you can start that early, and you know, we'll all always have stresses in our lives.
Yeah.
If we can start early and kind of get the tools that we need to promote our mental health, you know, we'll find out what works for us, then it can make things a lot smoother in the longer term.
And that's it. And I guess it's, like you mentioned before, it's promoting that to our children as well, isn't it? Of like different ways, you know, I mean, because of what, like my anxiety and stuff, I do a lot with the girls around emotions and mental health and stuff. But it is that thing of promoting that to your children and helping them be able to deal with their mental health, I guess, isn't it? And like you say, with social media and stuff around, it's different now to how when we were younger, I think, and there's a lot more involved in kind of in mental health struggles, I guess. Yeah.
And I guess there's positives to come as well, isn't there, out of social media for our children, totally, in terms of mental health, because there'll be people on there talking about it, you know, there's lots of people, you know, a lot more. You think Prince Harry talked about his mental health quite recently, and so you think hearing for our children to be hearing people speaking openly on platforms like social media is great. But you're right, as a parent, it is really scary, isn't it? I don't know how old you were when Facebook and things came. I think I was at uni, and I just remember it was like, it's almost been like a switch has been flicked in that kind of time before in times. It's so different, isn't it? Yeah. And it'd be interesting to see what it's like for our children going forwards. But really great that you talk to the girls about it, because I think it is important that children understand that it's something that they can speak to people about as well. I think schools have got a lot more kind of support in place now, especially like the high schools. The children I see from high schools, there seems to be a lot more available for them, which is great, because it can be a tricky area, that kind of teenager bit, when you're not really a child anymore, but you're not quite an adult either. It's a real grey area for them, isn't it? And they're battling with lots of different emotions and different changes. And I think especially them all coming through COVID as well, it's really impacted on them.
It has, and there's hormones as well, isn't there, that are flying around everywhere.
I'm hoping with having 3 boys there's going to be less hormones in my house, but I might be wrong.
My husband's dreading it. 3 of us.
That was my kind of focus on parents and families, if you will. So there was just a couple of other things I'd wanted to talk about, more specific to children, and one of those was immunisation. So children's going along to have their injections. And I know it's a real hot topic, and especially in the practice that I work in, we've got quite low uptake for some of the vaccines, and I'm quite interested to know sort of why that is, and what might be impacting on families' decisions to vaccinate their children. So something we've had a good look into, and I think really there's lots of different reasons, and it can go all the way back to, you know, your parents, you know, and kind of attitudes to health within your family, and an understanding of what the vaccinations are all about. And I think probably the thing that I've taken most from looking into it is probably a lot of confusing information out there, shall we say. You know, obviously there was the first thing that comes to mind, I think, is the MMR information that was in the media a few years ago about direct link with MMR vaccinations and children developing autism, which has since been disproven. We know that information wasn't correct, and that message wasn't right and shouldn't have gone out. But that's not necessarily something that people are aware that, you know, there's been subsequent, you know, changes to that advice. So that is something I think that can scare people. And I think the other thing with some of the vaccines is that sort of thought of, oh, well, you know, my child's not really going to be that ill if they get that condition, so, you know, why do I need to vaccinate them? I think specifically for things like flu vaccinations in younger children. But a big part of the vaccination programme is protecting the population as a whole. So the more of us that can be vaccinated, the more protected those more vulnerable people in our population are. So maybe our elderly, frail people, or people who've got conditions where their immune systems don't work very well. And probably most of us know someone that falls into one of those categories. So it's important to try and vaccinate as many people as we can. But I think the key really for parents, I think, is feeling comfortable in making that decision, because ultimately it's something you're doing on behalf of your child, isn't it, at that stage? And you want to know that you've got it right. None of us want to cause our children any harm. We want to do the best for them. So I think the key message I would give is to just make sure that you've got all the information that you need to make that decision yourself. I would always encourage parents to get their children vaccinated, because I think that the health benefits to me are very clear. But that's easy for me to say as a professional, you know. And but then when I've got my mum head on and I'm thinking about getting vaccinations for my children, I do always still have that little wobble, because it's just normal, isn't it? You know, you think, oh, what if one of those really, really rare side effects happens to one of my children, and I've taken that decision to have it done. So it is a real balanced decision to take, and I think just making sure you've got all that right information about that vaccine in particular, and why they want to have that vaccine, and what's likely to happen as a result of it. And again, this is the kind of thing that you can come and make an appointment with a healthcare professional and speak to them about before you kind of commit to doing it. If you're really not sure, and you've maybe heard something or seen something that you think, oh, you know, I wouldn't want that for my child. Have a chat with somebody and talk through it, and hopefully you can explore your concerns a bit more and come to that decision that's right for you. You know, the vaccines, there's obviously some that have been out there for a really, really long time. We've got lots of information about those. We can give some of the newer ones, maybe a bit more difficult, like the COVID vaccines, obviously not been around for so long, but we still have got a lot of evidence that we can give to our parents to help them make that decision for their children, and ultimately keep everyone as healthy as we can for as long as possible.
Cool.
So that was my list of top tips, really. But I'm happy for any questions if you've got anything or anything you wanted me to talk about.
I always do this, and I never have anything on the spot, and then it'll go, and I'm like, oh, I should have asked this, should have asked this. I don't think so. I think maybe with regards, like you say, about if you wanted to chat to someone if you weren't sure and stuff, like, is that kind of a thing at most practices, or just, you know, like in terms of, so when you're trying to ring up for an appointment and stuff, it's obviously quite tricky and very busy and stuff, and I think for me, I would feel like I was kind of taking up time that was needed for someone else with an appointment. Do you know what I mean? So like if I want, and I don't think I'd be scared to ask for the advice, but I'd feel like I was putting on the nurse or the GP or whatever when I was just wanting advice. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. Yeah. But I certainly, as a GP, I wouldn't feel like that was a waste of my time. I think it depends on what the topic is that you want to talk about. I might feel like there was someone better in my team that could talk to you about it. But who, say for example, if it was about your smear, the process of having a smear, I might say to you, do you know what, my nurses do these every single day. You might be better talking to one of those. If it's vaccinations, again, you've got teams in your practice who do that. You can, you know, it may be that it's worthwhile speaking to one of them. But as a GP, we obviously know this information. We're trained on it, and we can have conversations like that. If you think, Emma, like say you wanted to come in and talk to me about having a smear because you just weren't sure, but you decided that you wouldn't because you didn't want to waste my time, so you didn't come for your smear, and then a few years down the line something happened and you had cervical cancer, I would have far rather spent 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour talking to you about having a smear, to have encouraged you to have gone for one, to have prevented that from happening. So yes, GP surgeons are busy, absolutely can't deny that, but what I'd say two things that we don't mind seeing are, one is children that parents are worried about. Never mind seeing a child whose mum is worried. If a mum is worried about a child, there's something to be worried about, because you know them best. And even if I see there's nothing better than seeing a child coming into my surgery and bombing it around the room, because I know that they're probably okay. But I'm more than happy to see that child and reassure that parent that at that time I don't think there's anything to worry about. But the other thing is preventative care. I think a lot of what I see, I can't deny, is people who've already got an illness and were trying to manage it. But if my surgery was full of people that were wanting to take steps for like preventative healthcare and doing things to improve their health, then in a few years' time I wouldn't be seeing nearly as many poorly people. So it's definitely worth taking that time. But I know what you mean, and I think even just the you finding time in your day as a patient to come along and have that appointment. But I think now surgeries are certainly trying to be more accessible, so things like telephone video appointments, a lot have got like messaging services set up where you can have like a text message conversation, stuff like that. Even if it's just sending some really useful links and saying, have a look at this website, this PDF is really useful, to give you some information, and then if you've still got questions, then coming back and having a proper appointment. But I would really encourage people to kind of take that as an offer. Promoting good health isn't just about dealing with the illness once it's there.
Oh, bro, no, that's really good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't think I've got any other questions.
Okay.
Anything else that you want to start on the end, or is that everything?
No, I think my take-home message would just be, as a parent, prioritise yourself a bit more. Think about what's important to you, and think a little bit about your longer term health and what little steps you can take now whilst you're busy with everything else, just to make yourself feel better from in a health point of view.
And get your smears and check your boobs.
Yep.
There we go. Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please share, follow and or review. If there's any topics you'd like to see covered, please just let me know. You can get in touch with me by my email or on my Facebook or Instagram page. Thank you, Joanne, for joining us and sharing your knowledge. Keep your eyes peeled for our next special episode, and I'll be back soon. Bye.